Welcome to the Skilled Podcast from Growth Space, the place where we share stories and strategies from leaders who've turned growth and development into a competitive advantage. Our host is Omer Glass, co-founder and CEO at Growth Space. We're also hosted by Sam Thomas, senior L&D leader and co-founder of Experience Boost. Let's dig in.
So we are joined today by Julie Stone, Chief Learning Officer at TTEC. Welcome. So Julie, you've spent your career at the intersection of learning, performance, and talent at companies such as Prudential and eBay and now TTEC. So can you tell us a little bit about your career journey and how you ended up leading learning at TTEC?
Yes, I'd love to. And first, thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Throughout my career, I've been in learning and development, in HR, the talent management space the entire time. Like many people can probably relate to, I've always had L&D as one of the core disciplines that I've been accountable for. But throughout my journey, I've had the opportunity to lead other components of, the employee experience, the talent space, whether that be performance management, succession, career development and growth, even being an HR business partner, and then leading other aspects of support functions that have been quite varied. And so what that really has done for me, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity, is it's allowed me to really build strong business acumen and get a solid understanding of what it takes to run a company end to end, as a full ecosystem, caring for the people who really are the heart of every company from that very first engagement when they're considering joining all the way through their onboarding, their ongoing development, progression, and ultimately when they leave, how do you even stay engaged with them in that way? So yeah, it's been a wonderful journey, and that brought me to TTEC, where I've been for the last 2 years.
What an exciting journey. I love that, and the whole scope of the end-to-end experience of an employee from the first join at the website all the way through them exiting the company, if that so happens. So TTEC is unusual in that learning quality is really a part of what clients are actually buying, right? So most L&D leaders talk about learning as a cost center.
Yeah.
But you're running a function where training has to prove value in the market as well, not just internally. So what does external accountability change about how you think about your role and the bar you hold your team to?
Yeah, I love this question. And it's what drew me to this industry, the business process outsourcing or BPO industry. And core and central is that our people are our product. That is the value that we are bringing to others. And so it's absolutely essential that you select the right talent with the right profile that is going to be successful, that you onboard them in a way that makes them feel valued for who they are as an individual, that makes them feel like they belong, that makes them feel like they have an opportunity for growth, that's going to help them accelerate, what is often called time to proficiency, time to competency, that time period before they're able to start performing as a fully tenured employee. So for me, I have to make sure that, first of all, we're creating those conditions so that they want to join this company. In this industry, people have a lot of choice, and it's pretty common to jump companies. That onboarding experience has to be really excellent, and they have to get to that proficiency level that we've committed to our clients. And so I am accountable on a daily, weekly basis for the retention of those employees and as well their time to proficiency. If I fail on those measures, then we don't have a product to bring to the market and we can't meet our clients' demands. And so the opportunity is incredible. The way most companies, and I'll say in the other industries that I've been in, L&D is a little bit of a nice to have, right? It doesn't necessarily get held accountable with hard business impacting metrics. I do. And it's not just the ones that I mentioned, it's also financial measures. What's the expense to revenue to run my function? And so these are metrics that I'm held accountable for, and they really force a rigor around making sure that the experiences that you are delivering are going to result in real business outcomes. In most industries, and I think it's changing a little bit, but learning tends to be measured by how many people attended training, how many people maybe if you try and go from there, how many got a certification, but without any real understanding of the value that it's bringing to the business.
So before jumping into that, because I think it's fascinating and we have a lot to talk about, you talked about retention and you talked about time to proficiency. But then after people reach the initial proficiency, right, like they're just doing their job, I would assume you still have a spectrum of performance. Like you have your top performance, you have your bell curve, basically. So I will assume a big part of your role is not only time to proficiency, how do I take a new employee to proficiency, but also then I have the bell curve. So how do I make basically everyone better, but mostly the lower 50%?
Yeah, you're spot on. And so as we all know, you don't become proficient in new skills because you completed a training class. It's achieved through ongoing practice and feedback. And, until now, all of that was delivered by people. Now we have AI that can come in and help with that model, but it's making sure that you are providing ongoing coaching, support, and feedback to that individual, whether they're a high performer, a mid performer, or they're still struggling. And there's different coaching techniques that you use for those, but ultimately, I always come back to my 3 core principles that have to be in place to have a thriving culture. People have to feel valued for what they're bringing to the table. They have to feel like they can belong, and they have to feel like they can grow. And so with a high performer, you want to make sure that you're continuing to provide them with ongoing challenges that they can continue to master and perform well at. For the mid and the lower performers, where are those areas that they need to continue to focus on so that they can also elevate their performance, particularly in our industry. People start to, you don't have somebody in a contact center role that's just going to stay for years and years and years. You reach a point, it varies, but 3-4 years in, you start to be thinking, I want to do something different. Thankfully, we provide a lot of internal mobility opportunities for folks to move into other types of positions. The trainer position is a really common one for people to grow into. And so we prepare them in advance for that opportunity. So we've got a bench ready for us to tap into when those roles open. And it allows us to have 70, 80, 85% internal promotion rates for these roles.
Can I dig in just a little bit more and have you say a little more about what that training role is evolving into as you're implementing AI? Because I think that's such a crucial part of how we're evolving in the world of L&D.
Yeah. Thanks, Samantha. I love this question, and it's something that we've been focused on as we evolve the learning practice and methods that we use. So, and just for a little bit of context, we train our new hires to support clients in every single industry that you can think of. Some of it licensed, some of it not, healthcare, financial services, telecom, travel, retail, e-commerce, and those training programs range in duration from 1 week to some might be 4 months long. So let's think about what we know about our current macro environment, right? With social media, people really, losing attention spans, not wanting to engage in the same way. It is a real slog to get through a training program that is 4, 6, 8 weeks long. I don't think anybody raises their hand to say, yes, that sounds like a good time. And it also doesn't tend to be the most effective. Despite all of the advances that have been made in the field of learning and development, the majority of companies that I see are still doing training the way we've done it for 50 years with a PowerPoint and a talking head who is, speaking to you while you passively are supposed to take in and assimilate new information. And so that's not a good recipe for learning to actually happen. And that's not just an opinion, that's based on learning science. And so what we are working on is actually moving to a flipped learning model Now, this is maybe a term that people are familiar with because it's existed in K through 12 for quite some time, particularly in the area of math. And so basically what it is instead of introducing a new math concept or formula in class and then sending the kids home to struggle to apply that formula in their homework, you flip it. And their homework is some level of self-paced, being introduced to the new concept, the new formula, seeing examples. And then when they have that human expert, their teacher in the room, that's when they practice and they get feedback and they get that personalized instruction. And so we've done this in with a couple of clients. And so it's taking the notion of blended learning, which has been around for a long time. It's a combination of some sort of digital self-paced learning and classroom, whether virtual or in person, and structuring that self-directed learning in a way that's introducing all of the new concepts, reducing the time that they are spending in a live classroom environment with the trainer, but focusing it all on practice and feedback. And now we've got the added advantage of using AI coaches in real world simulations so that you get both. You get both the human coaching and feedback, and you also get the AI coaching and feedback.
So first question is, it's a little bit similar to the university or college model, right? Because you have like
Yes.
these lectures where you meet with like 300 other students, a professor. You're not interacting. The professor talks, you observe or not. It's up to you.
Yeah.
But then you have the TA, right? And I was basically, when I did my master's, I did a TA, and usually students came and like, oh, now I understand, because it's a much smaller group. Instead of 300, some like 10 to 40 people, right? So it's much more intimate. And this is where actually the real learning is happening, not where you're hearing from the professor. So you're basically flipping your learning, focusing the human to human time on the TA, or kind of like the group and missions, which is brilliant. How big are these groups of learning? Like how many people in the classroom, in the human interface?
20 to 25.
Super interesting. And second question, you started mentioning AI, right? Like AI coaches, working with them. Can you talk more about that? Like what are the coaches? I will assume these are more trainers than coaches, less kind of like how are you, what are your goals, and more like on the job coaching, basically with your specific context.
So we have a branded product that we call Real Skill, which is intended to do exactly that. Real world scenarios of the work that you will do on your job, and you practice with an AI agent. Now, when we started developing these several years ago, in 2022, it was very much a bot experience. And we are transitioning more towards an agentic AI experience where it will really respond to any input that you give it. But we structure them around the actual work tasks and scenarios. So for example, let's say I'm a new hire and I'm assigned to a healthcare client, and one of my primary pieces of work is signing people up for their annual enrollment. What insurance, package are they going to select, and any questions that they have. So my Real Skill experience will be interacting with AI, whether it's voice, like it's simulating a phone call, or a message, if it's chat, or even email. And then we have a dialogue back and forth. The AI responds to me. It gives me feedback along the way. And then at the end, just as we do in the real world, we apply the quality rubric for that program, and it'll say, great, here's how you scored. Here's the things that you did really well. Here's the things that, you should continue to work on. That information also goes to my trainer, who's now better equipped to coach me when they're in session with me. And so as a learner, I can do that as many times as I want, getting new feedback and new scenarios every time. And the value of that is like, it's the new way to do a role play. And I'll just say, role plays are terrible in their original, implementation. Nobody has ever said, ooh, let me do role plays. I love them so much. They're awkward, they're weird, they don't feel natural, they're super subjective. People are afraid to give feedback. There's all these variables that go into it. And at the end of the day, they're just kind of embarrassing, So this allows me to interact, no embarrassment, no judgment. Nobody knows if I say something completely off, and it builds my confidence. And so we have incorporated these real skill simulations in many, many, many of our programs. And we've proven through our data that they actually drive improvements in not only the metrics that are important for our clients, like average handle time or customer satisfaction, but they speed up that time to proficiency.
Fantastic. And as a learning nerd, I'm loving all of this. So it is working in practice.
Yes.
Your
Oh, yeah.
company has won 2 awards. You got the gold at Brandon Hall and then the Stevie Gold for customer service training as well. So it's definitely working. The data's there to prove it. And what I'm hearing is that you're allowing AI to build that scaffolding experience while you're allowing the human to bring in the context. Is that how it's working in practice for you?
I would say there is scaffolding in the AI, but there's also scaffolding in the entire program. We are making sure that we have spaced, repeated practice, that it scaffolds or grows in complexity throughout the entire program and in the design overall. I will say the next kind of holy grail that we are trying to move towards and that we are going to do some pilots with this year is in true adaptive learning. So, everybody talks about personalized and personalized is great. So you take a pre-assessment, to tell you where you need to jump in. You decide if you want to, read or watch a video, but adaptive is the double click under that. And this is where, if you think about Khan Academy, they have done this so extraordinarily well in K through 12, where it recognizes not only my starting point, but the pace at which I am able to learn. And so it's adjusting the complexity and the pacing. And this is what I think is really, really beautiful, is it puts it in a context that I care about. So one of the examples that really stuck with me with kids is maybe I have to sit down and I need to learn about fractions, and I could care less about fractions, but I really love basketball. And so put it in the context of basketball, which I'm hungry to talk about and interact with, and I already know stuff about it. That's going to really draw in that engagement, that motivation to learn, and it's just going to make it a lot easier. I would love to do that in the workplace for the adult learner. So, what if I was able to tie into the fact that, I love to run and I've been a long distance runner. If you can teach me a work concept that connects to things that I care about, that would be incredible.
So can we double click on the agents? Because you said, okay, so you have basically a lot of different industries your employees working, right? Well, there are different trainings and you need to basically have different modalities because sometimes you're practicing a phone call, sometimes a text and so on and so forth. So it means that you need a lot of basically learning agents, right? It's not just one generic agent who works cross industry, but there you have basically, if I'm getting it right, like, I don't know, maybe a healthcare agent and financial services agent and so on and so forth. And these agents are doing the role play, but they're tailored to the specific use case.
That's right.
I'm getting it right.
You are, and right now, our learning experience designers are building those experiences using AI. Again, like I said, we're starting to move towards true generative AI, where it requires less design and input from our designers. So that's where we're going. But yeah, you have it exactly right. It has to be specific to their context, their work, the work medium, and so on.
That's fascinating because I think like in the prep, like we talked about it, we're doing kind of like a similar thing. Like our approach to this is basically you build agent after each trainer. Let's say you have like your trainers, right? And probably you have like these people who are training, these people who trained them before AI came. And then whether you're doing agentic, so that you can role play, or you're doing basically adaptive, like you just mentioned, it's basically the ability to kind of like do the same work that a human trainer would do. And basically, the big recognition that we're kind of like, yeah, just building agents that are modeled after your trainers. So now you can really scale your trainers because I will assume you have less trainers than employees who need the training, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting is, we and I believe that there is still a really important role to play for a human in that learning experience. We did several years ago pilot a program for which there were no trainers. It was 100% self-directed using methods like Real Skill as well. And at the end of the day, we sort of abandoned it, right? Like it just didn't work as well. I think there's a lot from a learner mindset, a learner expectation that comes along with that. How do you cultivate that culture of value and belonging? It's not by sitting by yourself and going through an entire process by yourself. It's how do you bring in community? How do you establish connections and relationships with people? It's really hard to feel valued for what you bring to the table if you're never interacting with anybody. And so that's a model that we pivoted away from. I'm glad that we tried it. Who knows? Maybe as the tech advances, we'll end up moving, back there again. Right now, I think the next step for us is moving to this flipped learning, which is reducing the amount of time you have that trainer, but it's not entirely removing them.
I appreciate that you were able to fail fast and you embraced that.
Yeah.
And that you're still moving forward. You're still not afraid of AI. You're not afraid of what it's going to do for your organization. So with that kind of thought method, what do you think is the most important thing that L&D leaders are getting wrong about the pace of AI transformation? Because you've tried it, you saw maybe not the greatest adventure, but now you're implementing it in a hybrid model. So what do you see about what are people getting wrong?
It's an interesting question. One of the things that comes to mind for me is it's not about the content anymore. Content is ubiquitous. Content you can get from anywhere. You can generate it yourself using your own, whatever AI tools that you have. Granted, you have to bring context and judgment and everything to it, but it's not about content, which for so many years it was. Right? What library of content offerings do we have? I think it's more about how do you, at the individual employee, individual learner level, equip them based on their unique circumstances to build true new skills proficiency that are going to give them options for their career paths. I mean, there's just endless conversation right now. A lot of excitement, a lot of fear, everything in the middle about AI taking jobs away and people feeling really lost and really anxious about what that means for them. There's no question that it will reduce the numbers of jobs that you need. Most jobs don't get 100% replaced. It's portions of those jobs, and that's giving the opportunity to combine jobs in unique ways. There's a lot of talk about brand new jobs, and we don't really know what they are, and that's true. But what I have found through our use of AI, we haven't talked about it yet, but we have extensively redesigned our learning design process from discovery through design development using AI. And it's actually bringing in jobs and skills that haven't traditionally been done by L&D. So let me give you an example. We have our Wizards suite, which we've been working on for 2 years. It started with our curriculum wizard, which will build end-to-end the entire learning design for a particular solution. It'll build the sequencing, the modules, the practice, the interaction, everything there for you. All of our designers start with that now. Nobody starts from scratch. From there, we added on our coaching wizard, which is really the starting point to identify what skills need to be trained for the work to be done. And then we layered on a discovery wizard that will either assess an existing curriculum or it will, with various inputs, tell you what your design needs to include. And so this is now a full end-to-end wizard suite that our designers use. I've got about 80 designers who are developing client solutions every day. And I've got a very small team that is constantly iterating and working on the wizard design itself and coding. Well, sort of as a late aha, we realized, I've got this small developer group that is constantly making changes and tweaking and bug fixing, but you can't have the designer just, go to bed one day and show up the next morning and things have changed and they don't know what's changed. And I was like, gosh, we have to run ourselves like a software development shop, right? Like we need to have releases and release notes, and we need to triage our bug fixes and prioritize our new functionality. It can't just be because Samantha asked for it and she was first, So, and we got to kind of wall this off because I got to keep these other people upskilled without stopping their work. So that's just such a great example of this job has existed. It just hasn't traditionally existed in L&D. And now you've got this amazing combination of jobs and opportunity for people. So, when you go back to what are leaders getting wrong, I don't know if it's getting wrong. I think it's a reframe. Drop the focus on content that's in a unique, isolated domain and start thinking about how people connect across an ecosystem. Systems thinking, I think, is a really, really, really important skill for people to start understanding. And innovation, how can you get after the same work differently? So those would just be a couple of examples.
From an L&D seat, I 1000% see that exactly coming from your space. My background is in instructional design, and I agree with you. And I love that this flip of moving away from content, because content's there, but how are we including that human element of judgment? And then also the moving into like a software sprint method of release notes. And that's I love how that works. That's a really great way. As a fellow practitioner in this world, I have to ask, how do you build this for scale? You have 50,000 employees at TTEC. How are you scaling something like this?
We do, in my training organization, as about 650 people. We operate in 22 countries around the globe, 24/7. And so scaling is always something that we have to think about. I can't just train a small team. I have to train around the world. And so that's just part of our DNA. We do everything in sprints and pilots. We have to get comfortable with the notion that, things are not going to go right 100% of the time the first time out of the gate. That's okay. Expect it. Try and anticipate it if you can, but especially with AI, we're in uncharted territory. There is no playbook. We don't really know. So I keep reiterating to my team, we are going to break things. We are going to experience things that we didn't think about. That's okay. We have learned a ton. Now let's go figure out what we have to do based on what we've learned, and don't view something that failed or something that broke as a failure. Now, this is all part of the learning process. And I think that's a big mindset shift, because certainly I've worked in industries where, it better be perfect before you launched it. If there is even a comma or a period out of place, forget about it. Those days are over. And so everybody needs to make a mindset shift into being more agile, test, learn, pilot, and iterate on what you're doing. Which, when I say one more thing, is actually really freeing, because the stress that comes with needing to deliver perfection is really, really heavy. When you remove that stress and it's like, no, we feel pretty good about this. We're 80% there. Okay, some stuff will break, but it's okay. We're going to be able to manage it. That's actually a lot less stressful. So in an odd twist, this notion of being more agile and more open to change, if you think about it, can reduce your anxiety and your stress level.
I think I just spoke to my one of our co-founders, our CTO, yesterday, and he told me that for the first time in a while, he's scared that things may not work, right? Because a lot of basically things we're building, something can go wrong, right? After we established a very stable product, and now we're basically building others. And I told him that means that you're making progress, because by definition, if you stick to the things that cannot break, you're not building innovation, you're just maintaining something. So you're not making any progress. So it's good. I'm happy that you're scared. It means that you're not a gripe.
And to get a little bit of comfort with fear, it's okay.
Yes, I tell my team frequently, do not let perfection stand in the way of your progress. I want to see an ugly pancake. Throw me the ugly pancake. It tastes fine. we can make it pretty on round 2. So I appreciate that. So Julie, I want to get in one last question before we wrap up today. And this is my favorite question that we ask all of our guests. And if you could go back and talk to your past self, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself before you stepped into your first CLO role?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think there's a couple things that are related. It's okay to move faster. And believe me, most of my career, the feedback that I've always gotten from all of my managers has been, could you slow down a little bit? You're moving a bit too fast, right? So I'm not a slow person, but I like to have a pretty solid plan, and I like to plan well in advance. And if there's anything that this industry has taught me, which, you would relate to, because it's all client focused and the clients come first. And when you have a lot of clients, whatever they need is top priority. So your schedule is not your own. It's very reactive. And you have to solve problems. And so the beautiful plans that are super proactive, those are harder to attain. But the interesting learning, and has helped me grow my own learning agility, is that, do you know what? You don't need that level of planning all the time. You can usually have a really great outcome with just a portion of the planning. There's an acronym that is common for a lot of people, MVP, whether it's minimum viable product or what have you. I've now used it for minimum viable planning. What is the minimum viable planning we need to do to actually still get a good result? And I'm so pleased to say that it's a lot less than what I thought I needed. And so you can actually move faster. Going back to that notion of perfection, I need the perfect plan, I need to have cared for every single potential iteration, you don't. So if you can use that to free yourselves a little bit, I think that I could have gone a little bit faster myself. It's something I'm still working on, but it's kind of a delightful insight, I'll have to say.
That is beautiful. And I love that for advice for everyone, including myself at this moment. So thank you again, Julie. This has been a pleasure having this conversation with you. I look forward to seeing you online and seeing all the things that you're going to be doing at TTEC.
Thank you both.